long life, but I do not know about prosperity. Comrade Olorode wants all of us to, not just in terms of academic achievements and intellectualism, but also in clear-headed and consistent political activism and revolutionary practice. Professor Toye Olorode is not just an example in selflessness that has absolute confidence in the future and the ultimate. Sojourn at the university, I was in the faculty of law. But I wish to confirm today that Professor Olorode was one of my external lecturers in IFE. And as I do say repeatedly, I learned more from him than from some of my professors of law. They taught me technical aspect of law, but Professor Olorode taught me substantive law. All countries, especially those that emerged from colonialism, are expected like lava to advance to higher, sustainable stages of growth. This is reflected in progressive changes in all spheres, including economic, social, physical, and environmental. In the case of our country, my submission and start is that the labor movement has consistently, until very recently, played a dominant role in the political development of our country. The first political party was set up in 1923 by Abamakoli. And of course, the next one was in 1936. The Nigerian National Democratic Party, NNDP. This was followed by the Nigerian Youth Movement in 1936. Of course, you have the grand one in 1944. That is the National Council of Nigeria and the Cameroons, NCNC. But in the formation of each of these political parties, labor and young people played a leading role. In particular, the NCNC, where the Trade Union Congress then and the Nigerian Union of Students were represented, and they really influenced the way forward for that party. And when it emerged that the leaders of the party wanted to trade off the independence struggle of our country, there emerged the Zikis movement. That movement rejected compromise in its entirety with the colonialists and insisted on national liberation and a meaningful independence. His program centered around, the eviction of British imperialists from the shores of Nigeria, and thereafter to chase all European usurpers wherever they may be found out of Africa. End of quote. Many in the Zikis movement were workers. And as you will know, in our colonial history, by 1946, the leaders were arraigned, charged with the offense of sedition and jailed. On the Independence Day in 1960, of course, the leaders of the working labor movement and young people were pushed aside. So when we talk about the history of Nigeria today, the history of our independence, we always talk about Awolowo, Azikwe, and Amadu Bello. They were not involved in the struggle for the independence of Nigeria, but they were involved in reaching agreements with the colonialists to retain the status quo. The involvement became noticeable in the 50s when the colonialists were being chased out of our country. So when you read in our political science lectures or in our law programs that, and this will interest Prof, who by the way was to have become a lawyer. Understand Prof wanted to read law. We're always told that the Bill of Rights was included in the Constitution of Nigeria in order to allay the fears of the minorities. It's bonkund, rubbish. Whenever the colonialists were living, wherever, the Bill of Rights was a sine qua non condition so that the right to property will be guaranteed, the right to life, so that at the end of colonial rule, you are not going to nationalize the assets of colonial regime. So it was the same all over. It's not just a Nigerian thing. Partly, what happened was that after independence, the labor movement discovered, to its utter dismay, that the nationalist politicians were not prepared to challenge the status quo. And so, the likes of Ndokaeze, Secretary General of Commercial Workers Union and Labour Center, established a scholarship system under which Nigerian youths were secretly sent to Eastern European tertiary institutions to acquire knowledge and radical thoughts. And at that time, as my late boss informed me, all these young people were taken through Ghana, for training in Eastern Europe because you couldn't go through Nigeria. In terms of economic direction, the country continued in the way the former colonial masters left it. But there were demands by the Nigerian people, led by workers, for indigenization. For example, during the period of self-government under colonial control, the Industrial Development Act of 1957, the Industrial Development Act of 1958, Custom Duties Act, and so on and so forth, were passed to allow some local economic autonomy. In 1959, they were based on the need to nationalize businesses and ensure faster economic development. The year after independence, the debate transformed from Nigerianization of the economy to nationalization. Under the 1962 National Development Plan, 40% of public investment went to industrial development. Eventually, there were fallouts in the prevailing political system, leading to violent political clashes, massive electoral fraud, and 2 military coups in 1966. Under the Gowon regime, the company's decree of 1968 was promulgated. The aim was to bring local subsidiaries of foreign firms under government control. The end of the quiet, bloody 3-year civil war in 1970 gave the country an opportunity to rethink its position and develop a coherent national development plan. This led to the enactment of the Nigerian Enterprises Promotion and Indigenization Decree of 1972 to ensure local ownership and control of the country's economy. Again, this development was influenced by Nigerian workers. The law created a category of businesses exclusively reserved for Nigerians, and another which foreigners could participate in under specific conditions. Unlike now, the program was aimed at ending the stranglehold of imperialism on Nigeria and allowing it some control of its national economy, politics, and development. The free-for-all looting had not begun then, and the country had huge oil revenue, a declining but still strong agricultural base, and some political conviction built on a Pan-Africanist program. I'm sure you recall that was when Gowon said money was not our problem, but how to spend it. The Pan-Africanist program of the government that acted, again influenced by workers and students and young people, was so strong that Nigeria could nationalize the British petroleum for standing in the way, for supporting apartheid regime in South Africa. However, 7 years after the indigenization decree, there was a return to civil rule, and the profligate political elite set about reversing the post-colonial national development policies. This led to the passing of the Economic Stabilization Acts of 1982 and 1983 under the Shagari regime. And when that government could not implement the provisions, the military wing of the Nigerian bourgeoisie had to step in December 1983, led by General Muhammadu Buhari. The labor movement with the trade unions as leading lives have from colonial times articulated patriotic and radical positions on national development. They usually articulated an aggregated mass opinion and fought for them. When the political class began pursuing a bankrupt national development agenda in 1980, labor came out not just to oppose it, but also to articulate a clear, alternative, and progressive national development agenda titled the Workers' Charter of Demands, prepared and presented by the Nigerian Labour Congress to the federal government at the time. A comment from NASU, still around? The president of NASU, okay. The charter demanded that development policies be directed to the creation of full employment, a fair distribution of income and wealth, and satisfaction of basic needs for all: food, clothing, shelter, essential public services, adequately remunerated jobs, and trade union rights. He pointed out that the laissez-faire formula of development through profit and competition has created growing and unacceptable inequalities. It argued for a reversal of trade liberalization, arguing that the mainspring of all development policies should be the broadening of internal markets and conquest of external ones. Labour had about 14 items in the development agenda, including, of course, full employment, encouragement and development of apprenticeship, vocational training and skill acquisition, promotion and encouragement upon Nigerian associations cutting across ethnic, linguistic, religious, and sectoral barriers, and so on and so forth. However, the ruling class did not just reject Labour's national development agenda, but also sought to reverse all the gains recorded since independence. In 1982-83, they introduced a liberalization agenda which sought to mortgage the country's future to international finance capital, namely IMF and World Bank. To counter these moves, the Nigerian Labour Congress produced and popularized a leaflet titled Nigeria Not for Sale. Deformities of Structural Adjustment Program. Of course, you are all aware that the military, after coming back to power in 1983, by 1984, Buhari was sacked. According to IMF and the World Bank then, for not that he didn't agree with, neoliberal policy, but they say it wasn't moving enough, fast enough, and so Babangida came on board. And to deceive the Nigerian people, knowing that Nigerian people were opposed to any form of intervention by the IMF and World Bank, Babangida sponsored a public debate, a national debate. Of course, the ruling class lost, but Babangida turned around in his Maradonic style to introduce what he called our own homegrown structural adjustment program for the likes of Professor Olorode and others informed Nigerians that there was nothing original in the absurdity of SAP and that it was an agenda of the World Bank. Labor historian Omoyele Sowore, who I have identified in the hall, said of SAP, and I quote him, designed and supervised by the International Monetary Fund, SAP was deceptively presented as a program to restructure and diversify the economy, attract and guarantee foreign direct investment, stimulate growth, reduce the cost of governance, allow free trade by dismantling the commodity and agriculture boards, and enhance the naira by aligning float freely with other currencies. But in practice, SAP destroyed the Nigerian economy. Inflation rose from 5.4% in July 1986 to, wait for it, 40% in 1989. There were massive job losses rather than job creation as the local industries collapsed. Social spending was drastically cut. The cost of production rose drastically and the naira was devalued. To repress protests against the destruction of the economy, the military regime declared that there is no alternative to SAP, and those who disagreed were arrested and detained without trial or shot during protests. End of quote. 2 years later, the Babangida regime promulgated the privatization and commercialization decree in 1988 to sell public assets, public enterprises to the few rich people. A 13-member technical committee on privatization was created for the implementation of the program. In an investigation of the privatization exercise carried out in 2011 by the Senate, incidentally, the committee was headed by Dr. Lawan, the current Senate president, and that was why we just sent a letter to the Senate yesterday at level of ASCA that this report be revisited. The Senate had found that the Ibrahim Babangida junta and the Olusegun Obasanjo administration had manipulated the decree to transfer public enterprises to their friends and cronies. The Senate also found sharp practices in the exercise ranging from asset stripping, fraud and abuse of office, and therefore recommended a reversal of the exercise. But the federal government ignored the recommendation. Since they claim Nigeria is broke now, we're asking that the report be implemented so that public assets that have been taken fraudulently can be recovered by the country. Decline of labor and acceptance of destructive neoliberal policies is the new labor. The imposition of SAP and neoliberal policies elicited a contestation of ideas under the Alice Roman leadership of the NSC. The Congress vehemently fought against this reversal, which had begun with the Buhari regime, carrying out mass sack on an unprecedented scale. However, the Babangida regime removed the NSC, the progressive NSC leadership, in February 1988, imposed an employer, one Michael Ogunkoya, as sole administrator for 10 months before the emergence of one Pascal Bafiali. The Bafiali executive accepted most of the policy reversals, including the privatization program. When that leadership asked for a labor seat on the technical committee of privatization and commercialization, ostensibly to protect workers' interests, an excited military regime gave you 2 seats. You're only asking for 1, we'll give you 2. The Bafiali leadership, in completely subjecting the trade unions to control by the military, publicly denies the 1990 National Conference. It was helping to organize and accepted the military's annulment of the result of the June 12 election. When the Abacha regime seemed tired of the groveling Bafiali NSC leadership, it issued Decree 9 of 1994 to dissolve it because Bafiali was still pretending. Just get out of the system. The successor, Adams Oshobole, leadership of privatization program to the extent that he, as NSC president, personally took a seat, one of the 2 seats, on the privatization council. That is the apex body that oversaw privatization in the country and that still oversees it. Labor and electoral contestation. I'm submitting here that Labor has always participated in the electoral process. People like Chief Omoyele was founder of Nigerian Produce Traders Association, former Secretary General of Nigeria Motor Transport Union, that's NURTW now. Aminu Kano was a former leader of the Northern Nigerian Teachers Association. Some others like Bobo Chun Zaribe, Secretary General of Post and Telecommunication Workers, all of them were involved in the politics of our country. Answer, Adeleke and others. Also in the Second Republic, the former president of United Labour Congress, Yunusa Katungo, was a member of the House of Representatives and chair of the House Labour Committee. In the present dispensation, Babangida Aliyu, former chairman of AUT in Niger State, became a 2-time governor. Ibrahim Shekarau, leader of AUT, and so on and so forth. But the point I'm making, all these guys, deliberately, never contested election on the platform of Labour Party. Deliberately. Apart from Comrade Joseph Akilaja, who was a former NSC deputy president, former president of Nigerian Union of Petroleum and Natural Gas, Nupen Peter Patterson, remains in the House of Rep. Even when Comrade Adams Oshiom was going to contest, he chose the platform of the ACN. And of course, you know how he became the chairman of the ruling party. You know what happened to him. Given the strategic position of Labour and the fee-paying membership of the trade unions, why has he been unable to establish a Labour-based party with pro-people manifesto that can sponsor his own candidate and win elections? The party that has come closest has been the Social Democratic Party, which changed its name to Labour Party. The highest electoral victory it has secured is the governorship of Ondo State, but we're talking of another Labour Party. And the Labour Party that produced Mimiko and others became essentially a vehicle for hire by politicians who have failed to secure tickets in the mainstream bourgeois political parties. You fail in PDP or APC, you go to Labour Party. And that cannot be a Labour Party. Even Akala, your state, and of course, Andy Uba and others contested under this particular Labour Party. In view of the worsening challenge of insecurity and the role of Labour, in view of the worsening insecurity in the country, in all states of the Federation of Abuja, it is feared that the country may break up or engage in a full-scale war. And only Labour and other progressive forces can stop this dangerous trend that we're witnessing in our country. A retired general who once warned that no nation survived 2 civil wars has now called on Nigerians to rise up and defend themselves on the ground that the armed forces and the police have compromised the security of the nation. This particular general, if you must know, was the chief of army staff when in the 70s, under Obasanjo, you had to get riots, Oshodi riots, Fela South Bond, and these guys were just killing. And while he was Minister of Defense under Obasanjo, you had OT invasion in Bayelsa, Zakibian in Benue State, and of course, his own role in the Junkun, thief war, between Taraba and Benue State. And this was a guy who said he got an air block, moved across to the offshore, sold the thing, kept enough for his family, and publicly disclosed, I don't know what to do with $500 million. Many youth bodies have queued behind the members of the ruling class, agitating for the balkanization of the country. Others who are disenchanted with the unemployment, illiteracy and poverty, traceable to the implementation of neoliberal economic policies, have engaged in crimes such as armed robbery, banditry, terrorism, drug trafficking, advanced fee fraud, internet fraud, prostitution, and human trafficking. The failure of the regime to control the violent attacks on farmers and destruction of farms by a group bearing AK-47 rifles, operating as elders, and lopsided appointment by the Buhari regime have fueled the separatist agenda of several groups in the country. In spite of the program of his own party, that is the APC, for restructuring or power devolution from the center to the other federative unit, President Buhari has sworn arrogantly to defend the status quo. We fought the civil war. We're not going to allow anybody to break up the country, but the country is breaking on their heads. A regime that had negotiated and granted amnesty to terrorists and bandits in the recent past has rejected the call for dialogue with all separatist bodies. The House of Representatives had just passed a resolution. Calling on President Buhari to declare a state of emergency to combat insecurity in the country. What do you mean by a state of emergency? Because anytime there is a problem, declare a state of emergency on education, declare a state of emergency on that. Meaning what? Address the problems of insecurity in our country. But what did they say? Oh, we want to give him enormous powers to restore law and order in the country. And I'm asking here. But without declaring a state of emergency, as President Buhari not declared and authorized the armed forces to wage a full-scale war on communities in Kaduna, Zamfara, Katsina, Niger, Akwa Ibom, Imo, Ebonyi, Benue, and Taraba State in order to fish out terrorists and bandits. As a number of militias and vigilante groups not retaliated by attacking and killing scores of military and police personnel, the latest was that the president, like his predecessor, General Lucas Ambassador, ordered that all bandits, headers should be shot on sight. Illegally. Because there is a provision of our law dealing with illegal possession of firearms, murder and others. We have to arrest criminal elements and put them on trial. No president has the power to order criminal suspects to be extrajudicially executed. But that was meant to give the impression that the regime has now decided to put an end to this form of criminality. It is our submission that several decades of legacy of misrule and bad governance, corruption and diversion of the Commonwealth, and anti-people's policies have led to the ascendancy of insecurity in the country. No part of Nigeria is safe today, as marauders have been abducting people, including undergraduates, secondary school students, and even primary school people. We have found that armed bandits, armed insurgents, armed headers, armed militias, armed cultists, armed robbers, and armed kidnappers lay siege to the country, exercising varying degrees of suzerainty over large swaths of the territory of the country. The state is incapable of ending kidnapping or rescuing abducted citizens and foreigners. In the circumstance, ransom is paid by family members and friends to secure the release of victims of abductions from captivity. Just yesterday, the governor of Niger State, an APC governor, warned the people in Abuja, the people in the village, that these boys are coming because they are just a few kilometers away from Abuja, and that they are hosting the flag of Boko Haram. Nobody has denied presidium, realizing that the armed forces are ill-equipped and ill-motivated, the immediate past Chief of Army Staff, General Yusuf Buratai, has predicted that the war on terror will last for another period of 20 years. That was what he told the Senate. Without challenging him, he said, go and become an ambassador, representing our country. Since the Nigerian police force has been demobilized deliberately from maintaining law and order by successive regimes, the overstretched armed forces have been deployed and mandated to free many communities that have been overrun by nihilist forces in the various states. Having been overwhelmed by the security challenge, the ruling class will not hesitate to sabotage the democratic process or plunge the country into another civil war. These guys will call the military when they are tired. Mark it. No doubt, the central labor unions and individual trade unions have routinely and quietly condemn the booming business of kidnapping. But the failure of the government to address the security crisis has continued due partly to the failure of labor to mobilize the people to hold the governments of Nigeria accountable. In particular, labor has failed woefully to challenge the ongoing refusal of many state governments to pay the minimum wage and pension, to challenge salary reduction, to challenge retrenchment of workers, increase in energy costs, fuel and electricity, etc. It is high time the trade unions were reorganized and repositioned to challenge the dominance of the political space by the ruling class and the implementation of neoliberal economic policies, including the removal of subsidies, devaluation of the national currency, dollarization of the economy, unemployment and poverty. Just yesterday, the NNPC announced that by May this year, not a dime will be remitted to the Federation account. You know what that means. But ASCAM has recently compiled a report where we have challenged the government, and we are going to Professor Olorode that we should pamphleteer. We must let Nigerians know the information in this statement, which is that the government can recover 94 trillion naira. We have stated where these funds have been either stolen or hidden by the NNPC. This NNPC that is saying there will be zero allocation. Please, you can Google where you are. The Auditor General of the Federation has revealed that between 2010 and 2014, $16 billion worth of fuel has not been accounted for by the NNPC. $16 billion. Also, the Revenue Mobilization and Allocation Commission has also come out. NAITI has come out also to say that the NNPC has failed to remit to the Federation account $22 billion dividends paid by LNG, for the country. NNPC has not denied these very serious allegations or given any explanation. So, if they say there is no money now, because what they are doing is to say, we are not going to remit, to blackmail Nigerians, we are not going to remit money because we are paying for subsidies. So they are coming. Governors will then say, oh, let us cancel subsidies so that we can have money to pay salaries, and pension, and so on and so forth. But Nigerians must tell them there are alternative sources. We wrote to the president, recover 94 trillion. Nobody has challenged us for telling lies or that we are trying to promote false information. But we are going to insist now that this is the way to go. The invitation to the United States of America to come to Nigeria to combat security. In 1962, Anglo the struggle for the decolonization of the African continent. Indeed, the liberation of Africa became the cornerstone of the foreign policy of Nigeria. On January 14, 1976, the late military ruler, General Murtala Mohammed, called off the bluff of imperialism when he declared, unquote, Africa has come of age, end of quote. Despite geographical distance, Nigeria was made a frontline state on account of our enormous moral and financial contribution to the struggle against apartheid and colonial rule in the Southern African region. Nigeria has also, through the ECOWAS, ensured the restoration of law and order in war-torn neighboring countries like Liberia and Sierra Leone, and prevented civil wars in the Gambia and Guinea-Bissau. Regrettably, Nigeria is currently witnessing the virtual collapse of the security architecture of the new colonial state due to the diversion of huge funds, the amount for procurement of arms and ammunition for the armed forces and the police by successive regimes. According to ASCA, about $15 billion have been diverted by a coterie of army generals. According to the NSA, $1 billion recently approved for procurement of arms can also not be found. We can't find the arms, we also cannot find the money. To prevent terrorists and bandits from sacking the government, this is the cause, from sacking the government, President Buhari has appealed to President Joe Biden to come to the aid of the ruling class in waging war against terror and bandits. And without consulting either the African Union or the ECOWAS, the federal government has asked President Biden to relocate the U.S. African Command in Germany to Africa. Africa fought against the location, sighting of that American Defense Pact in any territory. In fact, when Liberia attempted about 5 years ago to ask for Africa, ECOWAS almost sanctioned their country. But our own president is now begging America, please help us. But listen to it. Since 2009, the cry for help in prosecuting the counter-insurgency operation are falling on the deaf ears of the leaders of the West. As if that was not enough, the United States and our allies have prevented Nigeria from acquiring vital security equipment. We're ready to pay. They say no, don't sell arms to them. Let Boko Haram continue. According to them, due to the abysmal human rights record of Nigeria. In particular, the federal government has been accused of failing to account for the prolonged detention of thousands of people in military camps without trial and the extrajudicial execution of unarmed civilians by military and police personnel. Although the federal government said no problem, we shall investigate. In 2017, the federal government set up 2 judicial commissions of inquiry to investigate. My friend, our corporate Tipo was a member of one of them, to investigate allegations of gross abuse of human rights of the Nigerian people. But the report of both panels have not seen the light of day. Hence, the government has failed to prosecute the security personnel indicted by the panel, even though the Buhari administration was allowed by America, was strict by America, to pay the sum of $329 million for 12 Super Tucano fighter jets in November 2018 to aid the counter-insurgency operations in the Northeast region. The jets have not been delivered up to now. Instead of giving Nigeria the false impression that the United States is going to send troops to defend them, America is just, Biden is just withdrawing American troops from Afghanistan. They are not coming here. They won't be deceived. We're challenging the federal government and we're calling on labor to mobilize mobilize Nigerians to compel the government to embark on mass recruitment of military and police personnel because our country is under-policed. We must equip them and motivate them to defend every part of the country. In addition, all states and local governments should proceed to set up defense committees constituted by young men and women in every community to collaborate with the police in securing the lives and properties of our people. The way forward. In my analysis, I have tried to show that the trade union movement, in comparison with the Michael Modu, Nukaese, Wahab, Goodluck, Hassan Soumane, and Adi Shiroma generations, the trade union movement has since the Bafia era suffer from lack of clear-headed, unambiguous, and principled stand on national development. However, given the rise of ethno-religious cleavages and the dominance of the individual over the collective, the labor movement remains the most pan-Nigerian and practically the only movement that can command voluntary national compliance on national issues and action. Centrifugal forces are gathering momentum, having begun to dictate the direction and pace of the country's movement. The patriotic and pan-African forces in the country need to close ranks and move the country towards a different direction. And time is not on our side. We are not unaware of the ongoing effort by the NSC to repossess the Labour Party, to rename and rebrand it or retire it in favor of a new party. Whatever may be the case, the fortunes of the Labour Party or its successor will depend on many factors, including the trust workers have in the leadership of the trade union movement, public confidence in labor, and the fidelity of labor leaders to the movement, workers' ideology and faith in the ability of workers, farmers, intellectuals, and the youth to redirect the country from the current ruinous politics of the mainstream political parties. Notwithstanding the success recorded by the NSAS movement last year in the popular agitation of the youth against police brutality, Labour remains the only group that has the capacity to mobilize and organize the Nigerian people politically to seize power from the soiled hands of members of the ruling class. In other words, Labour has to reject lethargy, step forward and play its leading role in facilitating the accession to power by the Nigerian people. It is pertinent to disclose here that at an alternative political summit held in Abuja last month and attended by a number of socialist groups, radical political parties, and progressive labor and youth organizations, it was resolved that a common platform called People's Alternative Political Movement be established as a tool for political engagement, social intervention, and contestation for political power, as a coalition committed to the emergence of a mass workers' party and the socialist transformation of Nigeria. The movement further resolved to embark on a 3-month broad consultation to popularize the political platform and its program, mobilize other left groups and radical progressive forces to join in the new initiative, and intervene regularly in the day-to-day struggles of the popular masses across the country. In his goodwill message at the summit, Omoyele Toye Olorode charged us thus, and I quote him, the Nigerian ruling class have, especially in the last 2 decades or so, grouped and regrouped, conspiring with international capital to push Nigeria to the current economic and cultural brink that has also begun to threaten the very integrity of our country and the centuries-old solidarity among our people. Let us reiterate that we are here to declare again that a new Nigeria is possible and to declare the imperative of pursuing and realizing that possibility. We are here today to pursue the restoration of the sovereignty and the dignity of Nigerians' working masses, to pursue the restoration of the ownership of Nigeria to them. We are here to pursue the restoration of the strength of the diversity in our country and of our people. We are here to pursue the untethering of the liberating economic, social, and cultural powers of solidarity among the dispossessed, impoverished, and humiliated masses of Nigeria. We are not here to substitute ourselves for the masses and their self-organizing power. We are here to pursue solidarity with them and with their organization. That is Professor Toye Olorode. Upon a critical review of the nation, the summit came to the irresistible conclusion that Nigeria's capitalist ruling class and the state, as presently constituted and structured ideologically and politically, cannot halt what now increasingly threatens to become a terminal crisis for the nation. The platform has decided to mobilize the working people of Nigeria in contestation of political power with the ruling class by any means necessary. When they make it impossible for you to have election, then you have to think of other options. To achieve the objective, the movement decided to strengthen its relationship with the labor movement in order to reclaim the workers' movement, broaden the base, and promote working people's participation in the political and economic processes of the country towards the realization of the socialist transformation of the country. As part of its mobilization work among the popular masses, the movement would build and organize our women, our youths, students, peasants, and other exploited groups in the country, as well as Nigerians in the diaspora, and build effective political relationships with their movements and organizations. Finally, comrades, as I thank you for your patience, permit me to wish Professor Omoyele Sowore happy birthday